Elbow to the arm and you're to blame. You give cops a bad name. What the hell was this cop thinking? Normally, I am not one to criticize law enforcement. I feel like cops already deal with a lot of unnecessary criticism. Cops have been dehumanized. They become the target of society's frustrations. For some reason, some people seem to forget that these men and women wake up every morning knowing that they're going to walk out the door and risk their lives for you for a measly $62,000 a year. Would you be willing to risk your life for complete strangers for 60 grand a year? I wouldn't. So I have a lot of respect for cops, and I try not to pile onto the abundance of criticism they already receive. But what happened yesterday morning at Texas A&M, that was unacceptable. Right before halftime, South Carolina receiver Nyck Harbor caught a pass, ran 80 yards for a touchdown. The touchdown put the Cox up 27-3 on Texas A&M going into halftime. I guess maybe the Aggies were hungover because they looked like flaming ass fire in the first half. I know these 11 a.m. games are normally brutal for home teams in college football, but you can't look like complete shit at home against one of the worst teams in the SEC. To their credit, though, Texas A&M eventually woke the hell up in the second half and remained undefeated. But right before halftime, Nyck Harbor scores a touchdown to put the Cox up 27-3. As he's running through the end zone, he appears to maybe cramp up. Initially, it looked like maybe a hamstring injury. Either way, Nyck Harbor and some of his teammates run through the end zone into the tunnel. As they're making their way back onto the field, a Texas State trooper is approaching from the opposite direction. Most logical people, when they see a group of 4 or 5 people coming and their path is clearly blocked, most people are going to step aside and let them pass through. Me personally, I'm going to step aside and let them pass through because I don't want people I don't know touching me. If I'm walking down the street and I see a group of people approaching, blocking my path, I'm not walking through the group. I don't know where their hands have been. I don't know how long it's been since they've last showered. They could be highly contagious, or even worse, they could be infected with the woke fungus or a severe case of stage 4 OMB. Or it's really bad. I don't want their germs getting all over me. Uncle KC takes 2 showers every day to ensure maximum cleanliness. Unfortunately, instead of letting these young men from South Carolina pass through the tunnel, this Texas State trooper, he decides to approach him and he intentionally forces his way through. He was immediately removed from game day duties. He was sent home, but this state trooper is lucky that this minor altercation didn't turn into something major. Make sure to like and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter at KC_BTL84. Link to the second channel in the description below. Today on the second channel, gonna be talking about my Pelicans finally firing head coach Bill Green. I didn't want to talk about this yesterday. I didn't want to rain on the celebratory parades that were going down Bourbon Street, Canal Street. I didn't want to ruin the celebrations that were taking place on Airline Drive. I know the handful of fans that are left of this dump of a franchise. I know they have been waiting for years for this glimmer of hope. So I didn't want to ruin the celebrations yesterday. Unfortunately, the firing of the Weasel is not going to solve the problems in New Orleans. I'll point out the real problem. So if you haven't already, click the link in the description below, subscribe to the second channel. As you saw in the clip, this Texas State trooper intentionally elbowed a couple of the Cox from South Carolina. Like I said, he's lucky that this didn't escalate. Credit to these young men for not retaliating. Obviously, this behavior is inexcusable from a police officer. You're being paid to prevent altercations like this. You're being paid to escort coaches, escort players. You're being paid to make sure they are protected, they're safe. You're not being paid to start shit with them. The problem with situations like this, and I wish this wasn't the case, but anytime a cop does something like this, it feeds into this negative perception of all police officers. Right now, ICE agents are being attacked on a daily basis. The cartels, they've offered $50,000 for the assassination of high-ranking ICE officers and Border Patrol agents. They're paying $10,000 for the kidnapping of cops, $2,000 if you reveal their identities and home addresses publicly. But KC, those are ICE agents. They're not police officers. It's the same thing. Law enforcement is law enforcement. It's all the same family. Antifa is fighting ICE and Border Patrol every night in Portland. For years, deacons at Woke United Methodist have demonized the police. Defund the police! Call social worker Shanice! You have a mayor in New York City who is anti-police. Democrats refer to law enforcement as the Gestapo. They're rounding up innocent people and sending them back home. Aren't they here illegally? Yes, but being here illegally doesn't mean they broke the law. The point is, Democrats and their pretend friends in the mainstream media, they don't need a reason to criticize the police. They are more than capable of making shit up on their own. With their unique ability to create fantasies, we don't need cops giving them a legitimate reason. This game was on national TV. Did this Texas state trooper think that cameras weren't going to catch this? I will say this, though, and I think this once again shows how the business of mythical racism is bankrupt. If this same thing happened 2, 3, 4 years ago, Black Lives Matter would be protesting in College Station this morning. Stephen A. Smith would unleash an emotional tirade criticizing a white cop for elbowing a young black man. This is so racist! That cop clearly woke up this morning wanting to make aggressive physical contact with a young brother. The Wicked Weave Joy Reid, she would have rode her broom from New York City to Texas, and she would be tossing great balls of fire at the police station. Jamel Hill would be publishing articles highlighting the oppression that South Carolina players were forced to deal with in Texas as they were being paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to play football. The SEC has become modern-day slavery. To my knowledge, I have yet to see one example of the mainstream media trying to make this about race. Hell, the former king of mythical racism, LeBron James, he expressed his thoughts on the situation yesterday and failed to mention race. That cop should be suspended. That was premeditated. Do better, man. I don't think this was premeditated. LeBron James a smart dude, but clearly he doesn't know what premeditated means. I don't think this cop woke up yesterday morning and devised a plan to fight players from South Carolina. I don't think he had blueprints of the stadium as he was planning the best point of attack. Maybe he was frustrated. Maybe he's a fan of Texas A&M and he was mad because they were getting their ass kicked. I think this had more to do with frustration than premeditation. Luckily, the altercation did not escalate, mainly because the kids from South Carolina maintained their composure. But if you're a cop, you gotta know better. You have to be better. Imagine if this situation had escalated yesterday. Let's pretend for a second that one of the players from South Carolina retaliated. Maybe he threw a punch or elbowed the cop back. Next thing you know, cop hits him back. Other players from South Carolina jump in. You got 4-on-1 until other cops show up to provide backup. At that point, there's no telling what the hell could happen. The South Carolina bench could clear. Players from Texas A&M could get involved. Next thing you know, you've got a full-on brawl. And when we wake up this morning, you know who would have been blamed? The cops. As you guys know, it doesn't take much for deacons at Woke United Methodist to organize a riot. Or as they prefer to call them, peaceful protest. Remember the summer of woke love in 2020? They rioted for the object of their devotion, George Floyd, for months. Earlier this summer, they spent weeks rioting in Los Angeles because ICE was sending Sanchez back to Tijuana. As we have seen in the recent past, it doesn't take much to spark the flaming ass fire. What happened at Texas A&M yesterday could have been the spark if the situation had escalated. Luckily, it didn't. Now, as far as punishment goes, I don't know if the Texas State Trooper should be suspended. I think relieving the trooper of his game day duties permanently is probably punishment enough. But more than likely, since this has generated so much publicity, I would imagine he will be briefly suspended without pay. Sound off in the comments below. See you guys later.